All right, nice to get this piece out of the workshop and into the new owner's home. So this dining table isn't anything special. It's just a black walnut top on a internet bought base. What I do think is interesting, and what I think you might find interesting about this, is how I went about beveling the top to reduce the thickness from 30 mil down to about 19 millimeters. And that in and of itself wouldn't be that big a deal, except for the fact that I've got a 3-inch radius on all of the corners. So, you know, it wasn't just a case of running it through on the fence. I had to use a combination of rub collars to do that. And as big as it is, doing it by myself, that certainly posed some challenges. So if you'd like to see how I went about doing it, stick around. So today's video, I have a little bit of a curly one. I've got this black walnut dining table top. It's 29 millimeters thick, and I want to reduce that down by putting a chamfer on the underside, but I don't want a steep angle like a 45 degree or something like that. And so I've decided I'm going to use a panel raising cutter to do that, which, you know, in a lot of cases would be fairly simple. It would just be like like raising a panel. However, with this top, as you can see, I've got a 3-inch radius on each of the corners. So because of that, I can't just, you know, run it through on the end and then continue in a anti-clockwise fashion, if you will, to essentially bevel, if you like, that underside of it. So what I've come up with is I'm going to use a combination of a rub collar and then just using the bearing on its own, and I'm going to have to do it in 2 passes. So I'm just going to set this up. I've taken all the wheels off the power feeder, and I'm just going to use one thin wheel in such a way that I've got the feeder, if you like, feeding into the rub collar all the time. For what I'm doing here, because this top is, 6 feet by 3 feet, it's quite heavy and it's going to be a little bit hard to control, and that's what makes this operation a little sketchy. Now, if I did it with the cutter on top, then any little mess up, if you like, that I make is going to mean that it's going to take a deeper cut, and I don't want that. So by having the cutter underneath and feeding it in the opposite direction, obviously this shaper, I can change the direction of the cut. So that's how I'm going to do it. I just need to figure out first, I guess, the height of my first cut with the rub collar on it, and then I'll take the rub collar off and just use the bearing as a rub collar. So I want to have 3/4 of an inch of thickness on the edge. So the top of that cutter will be, 3/8 of an inch. And I'll just use a height gauge here, and never done this before, so I guess that's where I need to be, at 3/8. And so I'm going to end up with a little edge here that I need to get rid of, and I can get rid of that by taking the rub collar off and dropping the cutter. So should be good there. I'm probably going to just take this off completely. I really only want this for for dust extraction more than anything. So leading finger, so take that off. I mean, it's going to be a long way back, but it's going to be better than nothing. So move this. I've just got some extension tables either side of the outrigger here, and the outrigger is going to be the main support. So like I say, I'm actually feeding this in the opposite direction to normal with the cutter underneath. And I think that's going to probably do it where it is. Everything's tight. Okay, so I have got this set at 2 feet per minute, so nice and slow, if you can see that. All right, so I did actually have a bit of a dry run with this to make sure that I could do it, and to be honest, I'm not super confident that I'll get it in the first go, but we'll just see, shall we? I want to come in on the long grain before I head around the corner, because obviously when I get to this corner here, I'm going to be going against the grain. I did touch up the cutter just a few minutes ago to make it nice and sharp. Hopefully that'll help. But this could be a little awkward. We'll see how we go. We'll see how we go. That went all right. This is the tricky part though. Well, it wasn't exactly the ideal feed rate, but I think we'll get away with it. Not bad. Not bad at all. Okay, so you can see here that I have this lip here to take off, and that would be, you know, typical for a raised panel to have that. But of course, in this situation, that's all going to come off, and I'll do that by taking that rub color off the bearing and just running around with the bearing. I'll just have to make sure that I get the height spot on so that the next cut matches up with this cut, but I'm happy with that. It looks pretty good. This corner over here has a little bit of burning, but surprisingly enough, the other corners on the end grain or the short grain look really good. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think the next cut should work well. And considering just how heavy this piece is, that went okay, I think. Yeah, so now I just need to just take that rub collar off and use just the bearing so that I can get the last part of this done. So what I might do, just move this out of the way. Here we go, that works. Just want to make sure here that that is going to work. Okay, so that needs to go down. Anyway, this just needs a light sand now and it'll be ready. Then I think I'm just going to go with a light arras on these edges. I'll try and keep it fairly crisp. So let's just run around it with the sander and I'll give you a bit of a close-up. So. Okay, so noisy. So the idea is just to break this edge so that it's not susceptible to actually chipping. Yeah, so let's just have a close-up look at that. That's it. Okay, so now when I turn this over, you'll be able to see what it is that I'm trying to achieve. This has all got to have a final sand, of course, but so that's what I'm after. Nice and simple, but yeah, reducing the thickness down to what essentially looks like it's a 3/4 inch thick top. So there you have it.